This video is in response to AirbrushMercenary's video, How Leaving the Watchtower Society Affected Me. You made a few interesting points that I wanted to address. I'm going to have to do this pretty quickly because there are a number of things I want to say, and I want to make sure I can get everything in the length of a video. The first thing I wanted to talk about, probably the most important thing in your video, was the thoughts about grieving, and how having been one of Jehovah's Witnesses affects your ability to grieve. There's no doubt that having been one of Jehovah's Witnesses will affect your ability to grieve. But even so, even if you'd never been one of Jehovah's Witnesses, having recently lost a close friend, you would still certainly be going through a lot of psychological anguish, and a lot of people who are going through the grieving process do find assistance in professional help, and there's no shame in that. I'm not saying you should do it, I'm not saying you shouldn't do it, but it is something to consider when you're dealing with such a difficult time as having lost a close friend, especially considering all of the other things you've been recently going through. Excuse me. But there is no doubt that the Watchtower organization, their publications, the Jehovah's Witnesses, cause problems for those who leave in dealing with death and grieving. And that's because at every meeting you've ever attended, every piece of literature you've ever read, every time you went out and knocked on someone's door, you were talking and hearing about death. Most psychologically healthy people, even though they're aware they're going to die, they're aware their parents, their siblings, their children, their friends, everyone eventually dies sometime. They don't go around thinking about it all the time. It's not psychologically healthy to go around thinking about death all the time. But when you are a part of the Watchtower organization, that's part of your religion. To talk about death, to think about death, it's an artificially created obsession with death, which is a psychological problem in itself. The Watchtower gives an outlet to its members. It talks to them about death all the time, but then it tells them, oh, but you don't have to die. You can live forever, and your friends can live forever, and if you or they die, you can see them again. There's still hope. And I think one of the reasons they do that is because when you leave the organization, when you first begin to realize that what they're telling you isn't the truth, that they're manipulating you and lying to you and all of the things future ex-witness is beginning to realize, that will translate, I think inevitably, that will translate into I really am gonna die, and my friends and family are really gonna die too, and there's not any particular reason to believe once they're dead I'm going to see them again. And that's traumatic, because not only is it something they had grown up believing wasn't true, but it's a thought that pervades the mind, especially in the early years after leaving. But even, I'm several years out, and the thought still does come to me sometimes. And I don't know, maybe 20 years down the road, it'll be less of a problem. But it is still there, and probably for any ex-Jehovah's Witness, that does cause a problem. And I think that's one of the reasons some people do go back. It's not because they believe it's true, it's not because they were happy there, it's because they just can't stand the constant thoughts of dying without the outlet given to them by the Watchtower Society that is, oh, but you can really live forever. Another point I wanted to discuss, you were talking about trying to build critical thinking skills. Religion prevents critical thinking skills, especially fundamentalist religion, and Jehovah's Witnesses are a fundamentalist religion. One of the services they provide to their members is a false sense of knowing stuff. They don't really know stuff, but they feel like they know stuff. They have certainty based on faith rather than on reason. And anybody who leaves that behind is going to feel empty for a while. They're going to feel a loss of the the certainty and the knowledge they at one time felt they had and they feel they should have. And it can even make them feel kind of stupid or insufficient in their ability to understand and reason on things. But in reality, even the smartest person, what they actually know is very small compared to what they don't know, which is immense. So, one of the most important things when developing critical thinking skills is the ability to become comfortable with the words "I don't know." Trying to hurry yourself to form opinions, although I think it's a natural reaction, and at some point probably everybody who is trying to develop critical thinking skills will feel the need to do this, isn't necessarily the most productive way of dealing with the situation. As your critical thinking abilities develop, you will have more opinions on things. But you'll find that they're different. Rather than having certainty-type opinions, rather than yes, no, affirmative, negative, you'll have opinions based more on probability. This seems to be true. I think this is correct. From what I can tell, this is right. Or that's probably wrong. That may seem insufficient to someone whose brain is still working on the faith-based certainty type of opinions. But once you start to have those types of opinions, you realize they're more tangible than the old certainty type of opinions were. It's more fulfilling to be able to say, well, based on the evidence, I think this is probably true, than it was to say, based on my faith, I know this is certainly true. Anyway, that feeling you have is actually a good sign that you are developing critical thinking skills. And if you have some critical thinking skills, then I think in reality you're ahead of the curve as far as most people go, because I don't think most people really have a whole lot of critical thinking ability. So keep it up, and don't try to rush it, and just ask a lot of questions, and don't feel the need to be certain. Another point I wanted to talk about, you have trouble making friends. That is universal among those who leave Jehovah's Witnesses. The organization wants it that way, to keep people from leaving and to bring them back when they do leave. But it is possible to get past. It's something some of us know as the ex-Jehovah's Witness no man's land. You've realized you can't be friends with the people you used to be friends with, but you still feel different than the worldly people around you. But in time, that does fade. I think it's fading for you already, so that's an excellent sign. And I enjoyed your videos, especially this one. And I wish you well dealing with your grieving process. And if there's any way I can help, let me know. And I think you're a good example for those who are currently Jehovah's Witnesses and are thinking about leaving. If they see your video, maybe you'll encourage them and help them to see that even though there are difficulties, it's possible to do. And thanks for watching.